Hello, my name's Andy Rasman. This is a video commentary series going through the book of Genesis. I'm the pastor at Oak Road Lutheran Church in Lilburn, Georgia. This is one of the studies that we're doing during the week. There are multiple studies happening at this church every week, and this is just one of them. And when I have time, I'm making the videos for YouTube, for members, as well as for anyone else out there in the interwebs that would be interested in this study. So what I recommend is that you would read Genesis 2 now. The first three verses are really kind of wrapped in of chapter 1. We've already covered them. But take the time, read Genesis 2, and see what ye can see before we discuss it now. What's happening in this chapter is the first question, and how does chapter 2 relate to chapter 1? I think when you read through this, what you'll see is that chapter 2 gives more specific details on certain aspects of creation, in particular the creation of a garden, two trees in that garden, the specific creation of Adam and Eve. So here's an outline of the chapter for you. Verses 4 to 7 would be like a summary of the history of God's creation, with the creation of the garden, with the creation of the vegetation, with the creation of the animals, and in particular man. But then details here. Verses 8 to 17. You see Adam in the garden, and then verses 18 to 20, Adam needs a helper, a companion. And so verses 21 to 25, Eve is then created, and you have the first marriage. So just picking up some of the questions that may arise from reading this chapter, and this will not be all exhaustive. I'm trying to keep this to be a short video. So thoughts and questions that arise. First, rivers of the Bible. This comes up. It would be in verse 10 and 11, you have mention of these waters in the garden. The river coming out from Eden is divided into four heads, and then the heads of these rivers are named, okay? And so this is the big question people always raise. If you have these rivers with these names, can we isolate, or can we discern where this garden would be on earth? And as this image says, the rivers of the Bible, Garden of Eden, it is paradise lost. Eden meaning paradise. It is lost. Why would this be? Why would this be the thing? Why would it be that these rivers are lost, that we cannot discern where this is? Well, nowhere on our current map do we see this type of thing occurring. One river giving forth to four other rivers, especially with these names. And so here is Luther's commentary. This is Luther's Works, Volume 1, Lecture on Genesis, chapters 1 through 5. On this section, verse 11, he says, "This is one of the greatest causes of offense in Moses, for anything that lies before the eyes cannot be denied." Now, this description applies properly to India, which he calls Havilah, where there is the Pison or the Ganges. Regarding the other three rivers, the Gihon, the Hiddekel, and the Prath, that is, the Nile, the Tigris, and the Euphrates, it is known also that their sources are very far apart. And so the question is, since it is established that these rivers, the best known to the entire world, are very far removed from one another, how can it be true when Moses says that they flow from one single source? That is, that they rush forth in the Garden of Eden. And some of you may already know the answer to this toward the east. For although the source of the Nile is unknown, there are certain evidences that it has its source in the south. But the Ganges, the Tigris, and the Euphrates flow from the north, and thus have their source in the opposite direction. Moses, therefore, is most obviously contradicting reason. This has given many the opportunity to imagine that Eden was the entire earth. Even if this were not obviously wrong, it still would not safeguard Moses' statement that the source of these rivers is the same. Moreover, though it is likely that if Adam had remained in the state of innocence, God would have extended the garden after his descendants had increased, even this does not mean that Eden was the whole earth, for the text expressly distinguishes the Garden of Eden from the rest of the earth. What shall we say then about this passage of Moses? Because it opposes reason and experience, it has been a very abundant source of offense, giving Origen and others an opportunity for amazing twaddle. Such interpreters disregard this cause of offense, and, as it were, walk through the sea with dry feet. But this attitude, too, should be far removed from an interpreter. Hence my opinion, which I also pointed out above, is first, that paradise was closed to man by sin, and secondly, that it was utterly destroyed and annihilated. How? You probably know this. If you keep reading through Genesis, you'll see utterly destroyed and annihilated by the flood. This is the flood in Noah's day, so that no trace of it is visible any longer. So that's the answer there. Paradise lost. We do not know where this is. And if you take into account a worldwide flood, as Genesis speaks of, and I know there's Christians today that they don't believe that the flood covered all the mountaintops, as Scripture says. That's what they have to make up their own stuff, because it's too hard to believe that all the mountaintops in the world would have been covered. But this would completely radically change the surface of the world. This place, as created, no longer exists. Another interesting thing here, in chapter 2, you do have this command of the forbidden fruit, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that you should not eat from. Just a kind of fun fact there, the word for forbidden in Chinese is the characters trees, which is forest. And you can see it's depicted as two trees, and the command. So this command not to eat of these trees gets the word forbidden. There's a lot of words that are like this in Chinese, where the depictions of them can very much be traced back to Genesis 1 through 11. And after we get to Genesis 11, I will pull that out for you. So, questions here. Who heard the command not to eat of the forbidden fruit? When you read through it, Adam heard the command. At this time, Eve was not even created. So how does this point to God created roles for men and women? You can read Paul's answer, and the screen's cut off there. Paul's answer in 1 Timothy chapter 2, 12 to 15. So he takes this, and Paul clearly sees that Adam was created first, and this command was not given to Eve, but only to Adam. We also, when we read through this, see that Adam named the animals before Eve was created. So he would have been in this role of having to express the command to Eve as well as the names he had already given. Here's how this plays out. 2 Timothy, I think I said 1 Timothy earlier. 2 Timothy, no, it's actually 1 Timothy. It's 1 Timothy 2. 1 Timothy 2, 12 to 15. I do not permit a woman to teach or to exercise authority over a man. Rather, she is to remain quiet. For Adam was formed first, then Eve, and Adam was not deceived. But the woman was deceived and became a transgressor. Yet she will be saved through childbearing if they continue in faith, in love, and holiness with self-control. So Paul clearly sees there are created roles here, and one is that man is created to be the teacher. This was a role he was given in creation by God's design, and the fact that Adam was created first, got the commandment, not Eve. He had to teach her the commandment. He named the animals. He had to teach her the names that he had given to the animals. And then also just seeing from this that Eve was the first deceived, not Adam. And if you look at all the churches that have ordained women and have them be the preachers, they're the denominations that very soon after end up embracing homosexuality, embracing transgenderism, embracing abortion, embracing even in instances what I would call universalism or syncretism, just kind of opening the doors to salvation outside of Jesus Christ alone. Another question here, why did God use Adam's rib to create Eve? This is from Got Questions, very interesting animated series here. You can look it up online, but their answer is very interesting. It doesn't say it directly in Scripture, so I don't think we can necessarily answer why God used the rib, but I mean, most commentators will use that this shows that they are equal. It's coming from his side, not his foot, not his head, it's showing that they are equal to one another, even though she came from him. They're both created in the image of God, and they're equal, although they do have different roles by God's created order, as we already saw. And then as we just know from that, women, as Paul points out, saved through childbearing. They have a role of childbearing. Adam and men have this role of a different role given to them. But this video here points out that with the rib, if it's only part of the rib in particular here, taken from his rib, and I guess the Hebrew can say part of his side. So if it was part of a rib, they indicate that the rib is a part of a human body that can regenerate itself. The only part of the human body that can do that. So if you lose a part of a rib, your body can regenerate that part of the rib so that you'll be whole again at some point, and have healing. So I find that to be very interesting. That would mean if only part of the rib was taken, Adam's rib would have healed, and he's still whole. Thought that was very interesting. Um, the best explanation of marriage, we also get in here marriage, and in this case, this is a graphic I found, the best explanation of marriage. This is why man leaves his father and mother and becomes attached to his wife, and they become one flesh. So here what we end up seeing is you see maturity. This is why a man, so this is Adam was created mature, but when people are born, it's when they reach maturity, manhood, they are to, then this is an aspect of God's design for humanity. Leave, this shows a transition. This marriage is a transitional stage for the man. He ends up leaving. Who does he leave? His father and mother. Father and mother together, that is the model of a complete family. Father and mother, not just a father, not just a mother. He is to leave father and mother. This is the by design. And becomes attached. So this is now a new family forming, to his wife, and the wife is the complement to the man. And they become, and this is a process of learning, friendship, and trust. They become. It's not, and it's become one flesh. So this is a deep intimacy between the two that only they share. Pretty cool. All that spoken about marriage in few words here in Genesis. But I mean, you see very easily from the beginning, God ordained and brought together the first marriage. And Jesus uses the same words concerning marriage, that what he joins together, let no man put asunder. Divorce is not the ideal. Because of our sinfulness, Moses permitted divorce. But it shouldn't just be something that we willy-nilly, I'm not feeling it today, I'd rather try someone else. Maybe I can have a more fulfilling life. That's not it. Work together. What God has brought together, let no man put asunder. And God brings together man and woman for marriage. He does not bring together men and men and women and women. And polygamy is also not part of the design that God has for marriage at all. And these are things that are sticking points for us in our culture. Concerning the creation of man, we see Adam was specially formed from dust, and God breathed life into him. Eve came from Adam's side, one of his ribs. Man is distinct from the rest of creation, has been made in the image of God. God created one man from whom all people have descended. We see that directly named in Acts. And then Jesus affirms the Genesis account of God creating two humans by quoting Genesis. So this is it. There were two humans. It wasn't a plethora of humans, which, it's kind of the old age earth people that are Christians that kind of believe that God worked through evolution. Well, evolution has a lot of people popping off together as evolution occurs, not two humans from the beginning. Concerning the nature of creation and origin of sin, he created all things visible and invisible. Creation was very good at the end of day 6. God did not create sin, author sin, or decrease sin. We see this in James 1:4. Yeah, again, the world's very good. He did not create sin, which is a falling short of God's glory. Death of all men, spiritual, physical, and eternal, is the result of sin. We're not yet to the fall, but this is something we need to go and take note of. There wasn't yet death. Romans 5 does directly say that death entered the world through sin. All of creation was cursed to bondage to corruption and decay. That's Romans 8:19-21. So from the one sin, ultimately you follow through with Romans and you see that all of creation was subjected to bondage to corruption and decay. And the question is, when was this? It wasn't day 6. So until the fall of Adam and Eve, everything was labeled very good in the garden. And so this curse comes from the sin, right? So bondage, decay, and the crying out for salvation from creation doesn't come until later. And we see that in Genesis 3 too, that the creation itself is cursed, not just Adam and Eve and the snake. So doctrine's affected by the denial of those points I just shared. The inspiration of Scripture. If we can't trust Genesis 1-3, what can we trust from the Bible? The nature of sin. The origin of sin leads to all subsequent sin. That's what we see in Romans 5:12. Rejecting Genesis 1-3. And I know we haven't read Genesis 3 yet, but kind of jumping ahead a little bit there. Genesis 3 is where sin enters into humanity, and then from the curses, the rest of creation gets damned or cursed. Rejecting Genesis 1-3 requires an alternate explanation for sin and its nature. I mean, if you're going to go evolution, you got to have millions of years of death, right, in the world, and God labeling that very good. Entire species being completely wiped out, and God labeling that very good. We shed tears when animals die. I mean, we get that that's not like the ideal, and Romans 8 tells us that's not the ideal, that they're going to be liberated from this bondage to decay and suffering. Death and new life, Romans 5:12-19, death and new life. Death came through one man, life comes through the second man, Adam. Death did not come through God's order and creation. So, I mean, you're going to have to come up with a whole new schematic to explain death and how a world full of death is very good. Creation and Christian life, to confess that all was created by God is to confess that all was created by God. Like humanity itself, the world was created good and will one day be redeemed from the consequences of sin. All right, so if you deny any of those previous points concerning man and concerning nature and the origin of sin and death, you would be, in essence, denying some of these points here. And so it's very dangerous ground to begin to take into account Darwinian evolution and other items like that come from scientists that in many ways are not practicing real science, which is observable, repeatable science. That at least would be the hard science. So they are playing interpretive leaps with what they see, rocks and fossils and things. And there are a good number of assumptions made when it comes to dating of materials. And so to reinterpret Scripture based on that is a big no-no, and it ends up impacting the Christian faith. Anyways, that's Genesis 2. A whole lot more could have been covered and discussed, but the next video will be Genesis 3, looking at the fall into sin, which has already been mentioned in this video, but we'll see how it actually occurred in Scripture. The Lord be with you. God's peace.